clarify some additional terminology. Is it insomnia or is it sleep deprivation? Well, insomnia refers to the fact that you have the opportunity to sleep, but you don't have the ability to fall or stay asleep. It's sleep deprivation when you have the ability to be asleep, but you aren't given adequate opportunity to sleep. The two main factors for sleep deprivation are shift work, which the literature suggests has broad-reaching negative consequences on people's health, and sleep apnea. So the other factor that can certainly interfere and deprive you of sleep has to do with thermal regulation. Not only menopause and hot flashes, but since our body's core temperature drops by just a few degrees as it prepares and enters sleep, it will be much harder for you to fall asleep, for your body to get into the sleep state if it's too warm versus too cold. So the suggestion would be to cool the temperature in your bedroom, because I think most of us have the experience that if in the middle of August there's a heat wave, sweltering humidity and so forth, and you don't have an air conditioner, it's much harder to fall asleep. It's much more fitful than if it's a really chilly, cold night and you're just trying to stay warm with blankets. Now, other things that are going to affect the quality of our sleep will be certain circadian sleep phase disorders. Now, we think of a standard phase of sleep as starting off at about 10 and 11 o'clock at night. And if we're getting those proverbial 8 hours, we're going to wake up again maybe somewhere between 6 or 7 in the morning. However, there's a delayed phase circadian sleep disorder. That would be referring to anyone who really isn't tired, is not sleepy until 1, 2, even 3 in the morning. Now, the amount of sleep you need is largely determined by your genetics, by family history. Now, if you're going to bed at 3 in the morning and your sleep need is about 6 to 7 hours, then it's not ready to wake up until 9, maybe even 10 o'clock in the morning. That can create problems. What about an advanced phase sleep disorder is when people at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night are sleepy. If you succumb to that, go to bed, then in fact your need for sleep is probably going to be met somewhere around 3 or 4 in the morning. Now, if that's frustrating, then what are you going to do about that? What does the evidence suggest that are the best ways to shift your sleep phase if that's presenting a problem? Medication are critical components of effectively shifting your sleep phase. So Ambien, Lunesta, over-the-counters and so forth, Sominex and so forth, those things are going to be important to kind of facilitate sleep. But vital is light. That we know, I mean, there's very interesting work done on full spectrum light displays, having people kind of, especially in Seattle, a lot of this research is done where they've got about, 4 days of sunshine a year. Well, it turns out that very effective for many people to just be exposed to light. What's important here is if you have a delayed phase disorder, it's kind of really hard for you to get up and out of bed. You can hit the snooze alarm, but before your head goes back to hit the pillow, open up all the curtains in the room. Turn on all of the lights. Even with your eyes closed, your body is going to start to get the signal, oh, it's light. We have to reduce melatonin production, and our body starts to prepare to awaken. Same is true, that's actually the primary intervention or treatment for an advanced phase sleep disorder. That is, at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, turn on all the lights, all the bright lights you can in the house. Keep it as light as possible. And that if, for most of us, our sleep cycle is going to last about 90 to 120 minutes for each sleep cycle. If you can kind of gut through, be active, have lots of shining light at 7 p.m. and make it until 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, then your body is going to be ready again, if you will, to enter another sleep cycle. So that will help you shift by an hour and a half or more to get more regular with whatever your requirements and expectations are. And there's two different rhythms going on that are going to predict and drive us to go to sleep. The first is the circadian rhythm that we're familiar with. Again, here typified by 7 in the morning, we wake up. 2,300 hours around 11 o'clock at night, we go to bed, and the S is as we sleep. But there's a different rhythm as well. Somewhat independent of our circadian rhythm is our sleep drive. That is, just an hour after we wake up, our body is building up the need to sleep, to go back to bed. Now that will build up throughout the day until, again, 10 or 11 o'clock at night, we succumb to that drive for sleep, and the majority of our sleep needs are met within the first 4 or 5 hours. Why is the #1 kind of recommendation for people with sleep problems to eliminate taking naps? That's verboten. Because if you take a nap, 2 in the afternoon, 7:30 at night, you snooze on the couch watching TV, you are meeting some of your sleep need. So then you proceed another 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. The sleep need or drive is not as strong, harder to fall asleep, and when you do fall asleep, since you've already met, let's say 2 hours, 90 minutes of your sleep need, you're going to wake up earlier. Now, this slide actually depicts all of the influences for you to fall asleep. The arrows from the bottom going up are your circadian alerting signal. That rhythm, and maybe shifted a little too far to the right, because our majority of energy is not at 8 or 9 at night, but more kind of late afternoon. But then as the onset of darkness occurs, will have an elevation of melatonin. At the same time, the arrows from the bottom are your sleep drive, exerting more and more of a force to need to sleep until 9, 10, maybe 11 o'clock, most of us will fall asleep. Now when daybreak hits, that sunshine, that light, will signal the body, and you'll have a significant drop in melatonin. We have an increase in cortisol. We go about our day if things are working properly. Now, what happens when we deprive people of sleep? There's a lot of different effects, not just kind of psychologically and emotionally, but also in terms of the emotional reactivity. These studies take subjects and put them in front of a computer screen and show them 150 pictures that are affectively charged. So they're pictures of people acting aggressively towards others, people who are clearly in distress, people who have been traumatized in one way or another. Well, when we see those pictures, all of us generally are going to have our amygdala activated and charged up. However, if we bring you back a week later, these studies would suggest, and we show you the same pictures, but the night before we intentionally deprive you of 2 or 3 hours of sleep, your amygdala activation is more substantial. But in addition to that, the connections between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex have been moderated, they've been minimized. So what tends to help us regulate or control the amygdala activation, the kind of reactivity that we see with the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, that's actually impaired significantly when we don't get enough sleep. So that is why, in terms of brain physiology, we are more emotionally reactive, anger, anxiety, sadness, and so forth, when we're provoked with these emotional images. Now, the latest example just happens to be out of Japan. There's plenty of these studies done in the US. But in the Journal of Internal Medicine, 2010, they had surveyed people in Japan who had no prediabetes, not insulin resistant, they were healthy controls, adults. And what OR stands for odds ratio, 1.42. What this bullet point is saying is that people who average less than 6 hours of sleep a night were 42% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes within the next 4 years. Okay? It changes our metabolism in a multitude of ways. In fact, when they look at the next study done in New England Journal just last year, took people who had metabolic syndrome, who also had evidence of some type of airway obstruction, and a crossover design. So on month 1, they got a CPAP machine. Month 2, no CPAP. Month 3, CPAP again. Turns out at the end of each of those CPAP months, they had substantial decreases in their blood pressure, lowering of cholesterol levels, as well as A1C levels. That's not changing any diet or exercise factors at all. Just improving your sleep allows your body to kind of have better metabolic control.